Hello everybody. I've made some videos about epilepsy in general, about some things to do with my journey with it, what helps with it. Well, now this is the third time I've run into a situation with my career goals and with um, things that I basically long to do in general. And I have come to the point where I basically um, want to talk about the possibility of trying to get more voices about the Disability Act because, like, I know the ADA is out there. I know that it was written in. I know it's supposedly that there is a right for learning disabilities, but um, you can do research, you can look at reviews. I don't know if some of you might have friends or family members that are watching this that have some form of disability for some reason or another. And here's another way to put it. Those of you who have faced challenges with being different for whatever reason, that you felt different, whether it's being different because you felt like you looked different and fighting for the rights you fought for, or whether it was being different because of the fact you felt like you also looked at love differently. I know you had to face some of those difficulty employment challenges as well in the beginning. And those challenges you faced are very, very similar. Where, what I'm talking about as far as sometimes where you might lose your employment when you want to tell the truth about whatever it is, you want to be honest with, but it ultimately gets you losing your passion for a stupid reason, and a reason that doesn't even make sense. It's like you become a target. And believe me, in the past I have tried to take legal action, but it didn't end up working out. And it's because a lot of times the employer ends up lying and not telling the truth. And if you talk to friends, or if you look up things, and if you look up ADA laws, for some reason, as an epileptic, I usually always try to ask what kind of accommodations are available in certain situations. And for some reason, there's always an excuse that they cannot treat anybody differently. And in some cases I could probably get that, but if you look up the ADA laws, you actually are allowed to treat the disabled different from the non-disabled. Because in certain cases, for instance, whenever it comes to learning something new, the disabled learns at a different pace. That is why even in school, there is such thing as special education, because the disabled learns at a different pace. And I just feel like it's so irritating to me, because I really want people who have a learning disability, who might struggle, to have a future too. And if we can make a difference for other things, I believe we can make a difference for that too. Nobody should be told that they can't pursue their dreams just because of basically their identity. Basically because of, they have some kind of learning disability, or because of how they like their appearance that makes them who they are, that they can't control, or because, of course, of their deep core values. And believe it or not, disability discrimination is still a huge problem. I face it myself. I have many friends who have learning disabilities that face it as well. And it just is very, very, very discouraging that those of us who have learning disabilities, anytime an employer might question whatever they question, depending on what battle the person is facing, whether it's they question why somebody's not catching on good enough, or if they're even trying, or whether it's, in my case, they question why I might be at work a little late here and there. I mean, it'd be nice if we could know that we can tell them the truth and tell them, yeah, I got a condition, and it'd be nice if we could literally show them, like, here's the doctor's note, here is the evidence, here's the proof. But everybody who has a learning disability still has to feel vulnerable that they're basically just signing up for a loss of their job, a loss of their career, if they reveal what they have. And that is very, very sad. I mean, if you've gone through something those lines, where if you felt like you revealed something about yourself, or whatever it is, that you lose your job, can you imagine facing that every day, including if it's something you just cannot change? And if you have it, can you still imagine that? I mean, it's a pretty rough, heartbreaking situation. And in some people's cases, who have a learning disability, yeah, sometimes they could probably get disability. But, I mean, when I can't really explain the pain of basically having a learning disability is almost having your life chosen for you, including when you are told that, you possibly can't have a job, or you possibly won't be able to do certain things. It's almost like having your life chosen for you. And when you have other goals and other dreams, and you feel like there's more to life than just being put on disability, it's really heartbreaking. It's really devastating. And sometimes when you basically come to a point where you feel like you have maybe moved past it a lot, and then yet someone else questions it, it really comes down to being depressing. And then in some cases like mine, it's either we basically have to end up working super hard until, like, we die, because, like, in my case, if I push myself to a certain limit, I risk my chances of having a seizure. I mean, I don't know who is familiar with epilepsy and who isn't, but there are certain things that I know can cause a seizure, such as lack of sleep, too much stress. And if I keep things in order, if I follow the expectations my doctor gives me, I know that I can have a normal routine, a normal life. I know I can do things better. I know what I can and can't do. But whenever it comes to situations like basically somebody trying to question you and you feeling like your career's on the line if you reveal the information, it's almost as if, like, okay, you have to either give it up and possibly live a life of misery if that's not your goal, or risk working hard to the point where you end up getting very ill and possibly die. And Nobody should have to feel like that in general. Not even people with cancer should have to feel like that. And I have met my share of people too with cancer who lost their job because they got diagnosed with cancer and they basically were going to need more time off or certain accommodations because cancer makes people so sick. And nobody in any situation like that, whether it's cancer, epilepsy, other types of learning disabilities, or other severe illnesses, whatever's out there, I don't care. Nobody should ever have to feel like they're going to lose their job just because of the fact that they have some sort of illness and they need to request certain kinds of accommodations. That is totally ridiculous and totally heartbreaking. I know some employers basically just get so selfish and they want to assume that people are possibly lying about the fact that they have a health issue. In that case, they need to request a doctor's note. Some employers probably assume that certain people are a safety hazard. In that case, why don't they get contracts or something like that stating something like you realize you are a safety hazard. If something happens on the clock, it's your insurance or not mine. I don't know, whatever. But by my opinion, if somebody knows that they have some kind of illness and they're taking their own risk to do something and that makes them happy, that basically only could harm them, it shouldn't be that shouldn't be an issue as far as the company trying to pick reasons to, I don't know, fire them, get rid of them, lay off of them, because to me that's just totally heartbreaking, totally rude. And if you do research, it says what it is called. According to what I found, it says, like, of course, discrimination for disability still exists, and one huge example for it is one huge example for it is it started with an A, but I mean it was basically where a situation where some employers just don't believe disability people should be successful. Some people in general just don't believe people with disabilities should be successful, because I don't know if you're familiar with history, but there was a time in history where if you were not smart, you were not considered really worth the time and energy. You were not considered somebody worth hiring, somebody worth, having in your workplace, that sort of thing. And if people had an obvious disability, including in history, they people obviously, like in history, didn't want to take the time or effort and didn't think people with disabilities deserved to be hired or even have potential. Well, I mean, some of that, believe it or not, still happens. And it's a terrible thing. Some disabilities are not even totally obvious. Like, thankfully, mine's not obvious unless I'm having a seizure and whatnot, and I'm kind of not, I'm basically not with it and whatnot. But others are, And it's also sad on top of that, that there, I have to say, it's just sad to me that there is a lot of complaints out there about other things, and yet I know basically issues with disabilities still happen, and there's even people who bully a lot of others with disabilities, no matter what age they are. And I mean, it happens all the time on this app called TikTok, and that shouldn't be happening. I know that's one thing we probably can't do much about, because I know some people are just going to be who they are, but in the employment industry, that shouldn't be happening. And if it does happen, whoever it happens to, they should have the total confidence that they can take it to court, they can prove it, and that they can win the case. Because as of now, from my experience, if I try to take it to court, the employer just lies about it and tries to make it as if they fired me for some silly reason that they think they'll get by with, and they won't tell the actual truth. And because I don't have like some kind of recorded evidence or whatever, it doesn't end up going to court. But this shouldn't be happening. And I guess because a lot of people think, I don't know what goes through people's heads, but I guess a lot of people think that since maybe others don't believe that people with learning disabilities have a very high spot in society or something along those lines, maybe some employers think like they'll easily get by with it or something. But still, whatever the reason, it does happen. Employers get by with it. And a lot of employers, they're supposed to allow accommodation of some sort before they even allow employees to feel like they're at loss. But they don't. A lot of employers don't try any sort of accommodation, even though there's a lot of accommodations out there. There's even accommodations out there that'll like, if somebody can't see, there's accommodations out there that'll like read to them. It's like a computer system. And with all the technology we have now for accommodations for people, there is no excuse why an employer should say they cannot provide accommodations. There may be like very, very few, such as in situations of like driving a machine, which I'm sure that'll change soon too. But there's very, very few excuses, if none, or whatever, as far as not being able to provide accommodations. And I really hope that I really, really, really hope that I'm not the only one that feels this way about this. This is my first video on it. And like I said in the beginning, I know we have the ADA laws. I know that there are laws in the law book about this stuff, but for some reason, people in the employment industry still do not respect and follow them, and they get by with it. So I hope we can start holding them accountable and whatnot, and get it to the point where people with learning disabilities need to have equal rights and be treated as equally as anyone else too. And I will be honest, that's probably my biggest goal in life is, and if that's the main thing I reach before I pass, before the end of my life, I'll be happy, because that's the biggest thing on my list. After everything I've seen, everything I faced, all the stuff I've had to deal with through my journey of dealing with epilepsy, the biggest thing I care about is getting equal rights for everybody with learning disabilities, just as there are for everybody else and for every other party out there. Because everybody deserves to have their dreams. And the fact that they have a learning disability and they might take a little more time than the average person should not matter and should not change that. And I just hope that the challenges that I've had to face with my learning disability and the doubts I've had to face and the discrimination I've had to face, I hope generations after me do not have to face that. I hope that they can believe, even though they have a disability, they still have a future of some sort. Nobody should believe their future is lost just because they have a disability. Nobody should believe they are worthless just because they have a disability. Nobody should believe they have no purpose and they're just meant to die because they have a disability. And it's like anything else out there. So I hope everybody understands where I'm coming from. It's kind of similar to other passionate things that have happened and that has been on other people's hearts. And like I said in the beginning, I don't know if anybody has a family member or has a friend, and a lot of you watching this might have a disability yourself. But it's also very similar to anything else that might make you feel different or feel like people treat you different. And it's just what makes you you. I can't change the fact that I have epilepsy. It makes me who I am. And there are times I wish I could change it, such as when my employers treat me differently, and when there comes times when I wish I could trust to tell them, and I wish I could change it, because sometimes I feel like it just gets in my way, and I feel like it takes a hold of my life and it controls my life and it ruins my life, and I have to fight back. I have never fought cancer, so I will not say that it's just like cancer, but it's definitely a long life battle, sort of similar to cancer. I mean, you never know if you're going to live or die from whatever seizure you get. You never know what type of seizure you're going to get, like if it's going to be a good one, or none of them are good. If it's going to be a severe one or minor one, basically. And you're always facing challenges from it day by day. And there's no cure for epilepsy. There's medications out there that are supposed to control the seizures, but there's no cure to stop the seizures altogether. I've been on medication now for 29 years, and I, from time to time, still get seizures. So there are other really hard battles of learning disabilities out there too. And like I mentioned before, I believe cancer is another one very similar in that field, where people should not feel like they're going to lose their job just because they have cancer. I know people who have lost their job just because they were diagnosed with cancer. And that is totally absurd. I hope we can put an end to that. I hope we can basically get to the point where just because we have an illness of some sort, whether it's a lifelong illness or a short-term disability, I hope we can know that we have job security. And if need be, jobs will be required to provide accommodation. So that's what I got for this video. I will try to provide more videos in the future, and I'm sorry I made this video so long. I guess you can say this has been building up in me for a while.